All right, so get ready to cozy up because today we are diving into the wonderful world of Hygge.
Ooh, yes.
We've got Meik Wiking's The Little Book of Hygge, The Danish Way to Live Well.
A great one.
And let me tell you, this book is jam-packed with really fascinating insights into how the Danes have managed to build such a happy and content society.
It's so interesting how this book delves into the heart of Danish culture, and goes beyond just like the surface level descriptions to really unpack the psychology and even the physiology behind Hygge.
Yeah, and it's like he wants us to not just understand Hygge, but to like feel it.
Yeah.
He paints this incredibly vivid picture right from the start of friends gathered in a snow-covered cabin, fire crackling, sense of warmth and peace settling.
It's more than just the setting. It's about something deeper.
So much deeper.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, can be tough to do when we're always, bombarded with notifications and deadlines and just the constant buzz of modern life.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's what I find so compelling about this concept of Hygge.
Yeah.
It's like an antidote to all of that chaos.
It really is. And one of the first things that Wiking tackles is how hard it is to even define Hygge. Like to put it into a single English word.
Yeah.
It's one of those concepts that's just so deeply rooted in a specific cultural context.
So how does he define it?
Yeah.
Because I think Hygge, and I'm picturing flickering candles and comfy sweaters and crackling fireplaces. Am I on the right track?
I mean, all of those are expressions of Hygge, but it's more about the feeling they evoke.
Okay.
So think contentment, warmth, connection.
A sense of indulgence, but without extravagance.
Indulgence without extravagance.
Yes.
Okay.
He describes it as a feeling and experience contentment, connection, warmth, indulgence without extravagance.
Now, that is a balancing act I can get behind.
Right.
But you're right. It's not about buying your way to happiness, but being intentional about how we design our spaces, our rituals.
And it's so interesting how important candles are in Danish culture. Wiking points out that 85% of Danes associate Hygge with candles.
Wow.
And they burn twice as much candle wax per person compared to Austria, which came in second.
Twice as much?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I love a good scented candle,
but
that's dedication.
Yeah.
Is there a scientific reason for their candle obsession?
Yeah, Wiking actually links it to the quality of light.
You see, candles emit a low, warm light, around 1800 Kelvin.
Okay.
Which is similar to the light that we experience at sunset or from a fireplace.
Right.
And he suggests that this type of light triggers this primal sense of comfort and relaxation in us.
Which makes total sense when you contrast it with like the harshness of fluorescent lighting.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever noticed how those office lights can make you feel kind of on edge?
Totally.
Like you're constantly squinting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like our bodies are hardwired to respond to the quality of light around us.
It's wild how much we take for granted, like the impact of something as simple as lighting.
Totally.
So we've got the cozy setting, the feeling of contentment.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Hygge is more than just this fleeting feeling. He goes on to connect it to something much bigger, Denmark's high ranking on those global happiness surveys.
He does, and he backs it up with some really interesting research on well-being.
Yeah, okay.
For instance, he cites this study from Princeton where they had this group of women track their daily activities and their corresponding moods.
Okay, let me guess. Scrolling through social media didn't exactly top the charts for, like, happiness-inducing activities.
Yeah, you're right, it didn't. And commuting and housework ranked pretty low as well.
Yeah, right.
But the activities that were very strongly correlated with feeling happy were things like spending time with loved ones, enjoying delicious food, engaging in relaxing activities.
Right.
All very key ingredients of Hygge.
Yeah, it's like this big, cozy puzzle, and all these elements fit together to create that overall sense of well-being.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that concept of the belongingness hypothesis, the idea that we have this fundamental human need for connection.
Exactly. And Wiking talks about how Hygge often plays out in smaller, more intimate gatherings.
Okay.
Maybe like 3 to 4 people, which allows for that deeper sense of connection.
But that makes me wonder, is there a downside to this emphasis on these close-knit gatherings?
Right.
What about people who are new to Denmark or maybe just a bit more introverted by nature?
Yeah.
Is there room for them in this cozy world of Hygge?
That's a really insightful question, and it's something that Wiking doesn't shy away from.
Okay.
He acknowledges that breaking into those established social circles can be incredibly difficult for newcomers.
So it's not all sunshine and candlelight then?
Right.
there are challenges to navigating this cultural phenomenon, even if it is rooted in these really positive values.
Yeah, it highlights how even something like Hygge can be complex and nuanced.
Right.
He points out that it can take years to feel truly integrated into Danish society.
Wow.
However, he also shares the story of a student that he met who actually found Hygge to be a relief as an introvert.
Really?
She found the slower pace and the more profound connections more aligned with her personality compared to the constant and often draining socializing she had in the U.S.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Hygge can be this double-edged sword for newcomers.
Yeah.
It's heartwarming for those who crave deeper connection, but it could potentially heighten feelings of isolation for those who are still finding their footing in a new culture.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
He does emphasize, though, that once you are in that inner circle,
Right.
the friendships tend to be incredibly strong and long-lasting, almost like becoming part of a family.
So building those bonds takes time and effort, but the payoff, at least according to Wiking,
Right.
is the kind of deep, lasting friendship that many people crave.
Absolutely.
It makes you want to brush up on your Danish and invest in a few board games just in case.
Right.
And speaking of investing, one of the most appealing aspects of Hygge is that it doesn't have to break the bank.
It really doesn't.
Cozy vibes should not require a trust fund, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
In fact, Wiking devotes a whole chapter to Hygge on the cheap, with ideas for creating those feelings without spending a fortune.
I love that.
Like building a mini library in your shared stairway, hosting clothing swaps.
Oh.
Or even organizing a pantry party with your friends where everyone brings a homemade dish to share.
Okay, a pantry party sounds amazing.
Right.
I'm already envisioning all the delicious food and the laughter.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a theme here.
What's that?
Resourcefulness.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's about finding that joy in the simple things.
Yeah.
About creating a sense of abundance from within
Yeah.
rather than relying on material possessions.
Okay.
And this ties in with some really fascinating research on happiness.
Okay, hit me with the science. I'm ready to be convinced that embracing Hygge is as good for me as it feels.
Okay, so Wiking highlights research that shows that beyond a certain income level,
Okay.
and this is assuming basic needs are met, of course,
Of course.
more money doesn't actually lead to more happiness. It's those everyday experiences of connection, purpose, and yes, Hygge, that have a more significant impact on our overall well-being.
It reminds me of that line from the book, you cannot buy the right atmosphere or a sense of togetherness.
That's so true.
Yeah, as much as I love a little retail therapy now and then, it's a good reminder that some of the most valuable things in life are thankfully free.
Exactly. And speaking of things that are free, nature plays a huge role in the Danish concept of Hygge.
Wait, so we're not just talking about like fireside chats and board games here.
Nope.
There's an outdoor element to Hygge as well.
Absolutely. Wiking emphasizes how Danes embrace the outdoors year-round,
Okay.
whether it's hiking in the crisp spring air,
Okay.
enjoying picnics by the sea in the summer,
Right.
or even bundling up for outdoor movie nights or meteor shower viewings in the fall.
That does sound pretty magical, even if it requires a few extra layers and a thermos of something warm to combat that Danish weather.
Well, they do say there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing.
I love that.
Right.
It really speaks to that sense of resilience and adaptability
Yeah.
and finding ways to connect with nature no matter the season.
Exactly.
So we can officially debunk that myth of Hygge being purely an indoor pursuit.
We can't.
Speaking of debunking myths,
Yeah,
Wiking gets surprisingly poetic when he's describing Danish cuisine.
he does.
And from the sounds of it,
Yeah,
it's about a lot more than just pastries and coffee.
it is. He acknowledges that stereotype of Danes as meat and potato lovers.
Right.
But he also emphasizes that they use fresh seasonal ingredients in traditional Hygge meals.
Okay.
He even includes a recipe for boller ikeri,
Okay.
which is a Danish meatball curry that he makes every year for his mother's birthday.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know. It's very cute.
I'm sensing a strong connection between food and family and tradition and Hygge in Danish culture.
Yeah.
Like each element strengthens the others.
Yeah, you're right. It thrives on ritual.
Okay.
And what better time for rituals than Christmas?
Right.
Wiking dedicates a whole chapter to Christmas Hygge,
Oh, I love it.
describing all the special foods, decorations, and traditions that make it so unique in Denmark.
All right, so spill the Danish Christmas secrets.
Okay.
What makes their celebrations so extra Hyggelig?
Okay, so picture this. A month-long celebration brimming with candlelight bonfires.
Okay.
And these elaborate feasts featuring roasted duck, caramelized potatoes,
Okay.
and a special rice pudding called risalaman.
Okay, you had me at roast duck and caramelized potatoes.
Okay.
But what's so special about this rice pudding?
Okay, so hidden inside the pudding is a whole almond.
Okay.
And whoever finds it wins a prize.
Fun.
And not just that they get bragging rights for the rest of the year.
I love that.
Wicking jokes
Yeah.
that some people are convinced it's rigged.
Oh, that's great.
No.
It's like a built-in dose of playful competition.
It is.
To spice up the dessert course.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of how Wiking talks about nostalgia as being this key ingredient in Hygge.
Yes.
You know, those shared memories and traditions, they bring a whole other level of meaning to the experience.
They do. And he even suggests recreating childhood traditions or starting new ones with your friends and family.
Like what?
Things like building bonfires for the summer solstice or making those pleated paper hearts for the Christmas tree.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yes.
So it's about actively creating Hygge traditions, not just inheriting them.
Yeah.
I love that.
Wow.
It makes the whole concept feel much more accessible
It does.
and adaptable to different cultures and lifestyles.
It does.
And speaking of adaptable,
Yeah.
Wiking argues that Hygge can be embraced year-round,
Yes.
not just during the colder months. In fact, he includes a whole chapter with activity suggestions for each month of the year.
He does.
It's like a cozy bucket list.
It is.
Oh.
What are some of the highlights?
Okay, in June, he suggests celebrating the summer solstice with a bonfire and maybe an egg and spoon race.
No, that's a combination I wouldn't have thought of.
I know, right?
What else?
In August, it's all about stargazing during the Perseid meteor shower. Okay.
Ideally, with some Greek mythology stories, just to set the mood.
I love that.
And for November, he recommends a soup cook-off with friends, complete with homemade bread.
This is why I'm loving this book so far.
It's a good one.
It's full of these practical ideas that are both inspiring and achievable.
Yeah.
It really drives home the point that Hygge isn't about these grand, over-the-top gestures.
Right.
It's about finding those little moments of joy and connection woven throughout our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And recognizing that those seemingly small moments, when you do them with intention, can have a really profound impact on your overall well-being.
We've covered so much ground here, from candle science to soup cook-offs
We have.
to those iconic Danish cargo bikes.
Right.
Is there anything else that you think is essential for understanding Hygge from this deep dive?
One of the most valuable things to remember is that Hygge is not some destination you arrive at.
Right.
It's an ongoing practice.
Right.
It's about actively choosing to create those moments of warmth, connection, and contentment.
You know, it's funny. When I first started learning about Hygge, I had this vision of it being about achieving this, like, picture-perfect state of cozy bliss,
Yeah.
like some unattainable Instagram aesthetic.
Uh-huh.
But this book really emphasizes the importance of imperfection,
Yes.
of embracing those messy real-life moments.
Absolutely. Wiking even has a chapter called Let's Sin Together,
Okay.
where he talks about how indulging in treats and allowing yourself to relax is a crucial part of Hygge.
Okay.
He even says Hygge is about being kind to yourself, giving yourself a treat, and giving yourself and each other a break from the demands of healthy living.
It's about finding that sweet spot between self-care and mindful indulgence.
Yes,
No guilt trips or calorie counting allowed.
exactly.
Which honestly is such a refreshing perspective
Yeah.
in a culture that often glorifies restriction
Yeah.
and striving for an unattainable ideal of perfection.
Totally. And he even talks about how just the act of cooking together, the shared experience, can be just as Hegelig as the meal itself.
Right.
Remember that story he tells about the disastrous sausage-making experiment with his food club?
Oh, right.
Where they ended up eating really late and the sausages apparently tasted like mold, but he still describes the evening as being incredibly Hegelig.
Oh, that's great.
I know.
It's a good reminder that Hygge isn't about striving for some flawless outcome. It's
Right.
about those shared experiences, the connection,
Yes.
the laughter, even when things go hilariously wrong.
And I think that's a big part of what makes Hygge so appealing.
Yeah.
It's about embracing those imperfections of life.
Yeah.
The unexpected moments that make memories so special.
Reading this book really made me pay attention to the role of light in my own life.
Uh-huh.
I never realized how much those harsh overhead lights were affecting my mood
Right.
until he pointed it out.
Interesting.
And now I'm all about strategically placed lamps.
Yeah.
And yes, maybe a few more candles.
A few more candles never hurt anyone.
Yeah.
It's remarkable how just simply changing the lighting can completely shift the atmosphere of a space.
Totally.
And Wiking goes into the science behind it,
Yeah.
explaining how that warm, low-level light replicates the feeling of a fire or a sunset, which then triggers those feelings of relaxation and comfort.
And he even compares putting a Dane under fluorescent lighting to forcing a vampire out into the daylight.
A little dramatic, maybe, but it certainly gets the point across.
Yeah.
He's really advocating for a more mindful approach to light.
Yeah.
Not just for the sake of Hygge, but for our overall sense of well-being.
Totally. And, one thing I found really interesting was his exploration of Danish fashion.
Oh, yeah.
I always had this image of Danes as being, super stylish and minimalist, which they are.
Yeah.
But he talks about how comfort and practicality are also essential factors in their clothing choices.
Right. He has that whole section on how to dress like a Dane.
Yes.
And it's all about layers, scarves, comfy sweaters, and basically anything black.
Yes. And we can't forget the Sarah Lund jumper.
Oh, yes.
That bulky sweater from the Danish TV show The Killing became a global fashion phenomenon.
It did.
Which just goes to show how deeply ingrained Hygge is in Danish culture.
It really does.
It's not just about home decor and cozy gatherings.
Yeah.
It extends to their fashion, their food, even their approach to urban planning.
It does.
And speaking of urban planning, I was fascinated by his chapter on bicycles.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, Copenhagen is a cyclist's paradise.
It is.
Dedicated bike lanes.
Yeah.
They even have cargo bikes designed to transport just about anything.
They do.
Kids' groceries, you name it.
All of it.
He even tells a story about trying to woo a woman by taking her on a romantic cargo bike ride through Copenhagen under the glow of the Christmas lights.
So cute.
Did it work?
Sadly, no.
Yeah.
But he remains convinced that it wasn't due to a lack of Hygge.
Well, there's always next time.
There is.
On a more serious note, it makes you think about how the way our cities are designed can influence our social interactions and even our overall happiness.
Absolutely.
Just imagine a city designed with biking and walking in mind,
right,
rather than prioritizing car commutes.
Absolutely. It would create so many more opportunities for those spontaneous encounters.
Yeah.
Those little moments of connection that Hygge is all about.
Right.
And he even cites studies that link cycling to higher levels of trust among neighbors.
That makes so much sense when you think about it.
It does.
Because when you're biking,
yeah,
you're much more present in your surroundings.
Right.
You're more likely to make eye contact with people you pass on the street, strike up a conversation. It fosters a different sense of community compared to being isolated in your car.
Totally. And on that note, he also touches on how a city's design can contribute to social isolation.
Right.
Especially when residents are forced to commute really long distances for work.
Right.
And this weakens those bonds of belonging and community connection that Hygge is all about.
Right. It really highlights how Hygge isn't just about individual well-being. It's about fostering a sense of connection and belonging.
Yeah.
On this much larger societal scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about creating a culture that values those simple pleasures, those shared human experiences that bring true meaning to our lives.
So we've established that Hygge is pretty awesome.
It is.
But what does that look like in our daily lives? Like, what are some actionable steps we can take to bring more Hygge into our routines?
Well, you know how Wiking encourages readers to establish new traditions?
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic starting point.
Okay.
So consider the activities that bring you genuine joy and a sense of connection.
Okay.
Maybe it's hosting a monthly board game night.
Fun.
Maybe it's starting a book club.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's simply setting aside time each week for a candlelit bath and a good book.
I love those. And it's a reminder that Hygge doesn't have to be complicated or expensive.
Right.
It's about finding those simple pleasures that already exist in our lives.
Exactly.
And making a conscious effort to weave them into our daily routine.
Yes, it's about paying attention to the little things.
Yeah.
Those everyday moments that often get overlooked in the business of life.
Right.
So maybe it's taking the time to really savor your morning coffee.
Okay.
Maybe it's lighting a candle while you're preparing dinner.
I like that.
Or maybe it's dimming the lights and enjoying a conversation with your loved ones by the glow of the fireplace.
These are such simple and accessible rituals.
Right.
But they have the power to transform our experience of the everyday.
Totally. And I love his suggestion to create a Hygge-krog.
Yes.
That designated cozy corner in your home.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Right.
Just a space that invites you to slow down, unplug and recharge.
I love that. It's like creating this haven of peace and tranquility.
It is.
Amidst the chaos.
Right. And it can be incredibly grounding and restorative to have that.
And as we're talking about creating these cozy spaces, I am curious about the role of design in Hygge.
Okay.
And we talked about the importance of lighting,
Mm-hmm.
but what other design elements contribute to that feeling of warmth and comfort and invitation?
So Wiking talks about the importance of using natural materials,
Okay.
like wood,
Okay.
wool leather,
Yeah.
to create that warmth and grounding.
Right.
He also suggests incorporating soft textures,
Okay.
like plush throws, fluffy pillows,
Yes.
cozy rugs, to create that tactile comfort.
I love that it's like wrapping yourself up in a big, cozy hug.
Yes.
I can see how those textures and materials would evoke a sense of relaxation and comfort.
Right. And when it comes to color,
Yeah.
he recommends sticking with a neutral palette of warm, earthy tones.
Okay.
So think like soft grays,
Okay.
creamy whites,
Yes.
muted blues and greens.
I like it.
Yeah, those colors tend to create that sense of calm and serenity,
Right.
which is essential for fostering that Hygge atmosphere.
It's amazing how much thought goes into creating that perfect Hygge ambiance.
It's true.
But it's about more than just aesthetics. It's about intentionally designing spaces that nurture our well-being.
Absolutely. It's about creating a sense of harmony between our inner and outer worlds.
Yeah.
And when our physical surroundings are calm and inviting and aligned with our values,
Right.
it creates a sense of peace and contentment that extends outward.
It's like creating an environment that supports and enhances our overall well-being.
Exactly.
So it sounds like creating a Hygge home is all about being mindful of the textures and the colors and the materials that we surround ourselves with, and choosing those that evoke feelings of warmth, comfort, and relaxation.
Exactly. It's about creating a sanctuary, a place where we can unwind and recharge.
It's about making our homes a reflection of those values of warmth and connection and contentment that lie at the heart of Hygge.
Beautifully said.
It's amazing how this whole concept of Hygge touches so many aspects of life, from urban planning to fashion to the importance of candlelight.
It really is.
But ultimately, it comes back to creating a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
Exactly. And I think one of the things I really appreciate about Wiking's approach is that he doesn't shy away from addressing those bigger questions about happiness and well-being.
Right.
You know, he actually connects those seemingly small everyday practices with their potential to, like, create a ripple effect in our lives.
Totally. And it's like we might think of Hygge as being about, cozy blankets and candlelit dinners.
Yeah.
But it's so much deeper than that. It's about cultivating this whole mindset, a way of approaching life. Right. That prioritizes connection and contentment and these simple yet profound moments of joy.
And that's definitely something we could all use a little more of these days.
Yeah.
With our fast-paced and often really overwhelming world.
Yeah. One of the most compelling aspects of Hygge to me is this emphasis on slowing down and savoring the present moment.
Absolutely.
It's like this gentle reminder
to
press pause on the constant striving and busyness that can really dominate our lives.
It's so easy to get caught up in that.
Yeah.
Where you're just constantly chasing that next goal or achievement.
Right.
And Higgs like, hey,
yeah,
what about what you have right now?
appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Find the joy in the here and now.
And I think that's so important.
It is. And that's not to say that, ambition and hard work aren't valuable.
Right.
But I think it's about finding that balance.
Yes.
Between, striving for our goals and allowing ourselves to just be present. Find that joy in the journey.
I'm curious, from your perspective as an expert, what do you think are some of the key challenges people face when trying to incorporate Hygge into their lives?
That's a really good question. And, it sounds amazing in theory.
It does.
But are there common pitfalls that people should be aware of?
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest ones is letting go of the need for perfection.
Okay.
Hygge is not about creating a picture-perfect Instagram feed.
Right.
It's about embracing those imperfections, the spontaneity, the messy reality of everyday life.
And that makes me think about his story about the disastrous sausage-making gathering with his friends.
Oh, yeah.
Even though the meal was kind of a flop.
Right.
They all still had a really amazing time because they were focused on that shared experience, the laughter, the connection they were building together.
Exactly. And it's such a good illustration of how Hygge really is about so much more than just appearances.
Totally.
It's about those authentic moments of connection.
Yeah.
Even if everything doesn't go as planned.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about embracing those perfectly imperfect moments like he describes.
Yes.
It's such a refreshing perspective, especially in a world where it feels like there's so much pressure to curate this flawless, picture-perfect life.
All the time.
Yes.
And it's just not realistic.
It's not.
And so it's about giving yourself permission to relax,
Yeah.
let go of that need to control everything, and just enjoy the moment for what it is.
And I can see how that shift in perspective could be a game changer for so many people.
Absolutely.
Especially those of us who tend to be a little bit more type A
Yeah.
or achievement-oriented.
It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between, striving and allowing yourself to just be present
Yeah.
and find the joy in the journey and not just the destination.
Now that we've talked about some potential challenges,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out on their Hygge journey?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Are there any simple, practical steps they can take to cultivate more Hygge in their lives?
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things to remember is that Hygge is really personal. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Okay.
What brings one person Hygge might be different for someone else.
So it's about tuning into our own intuition and figuring out what sparks that joy and that contentment for us individually.
Exactly. Start by asking yourself what makes you feel most relaxed and content and connected.
Okay.
Is it curling up with a good book and a cup of tea?
Love that.
Maybe it's gathering with loved ones for a home-cooked meal.
Yes.
Is it spending time in nature, surrounded by the sights and sounds of the outdoors?
I love those. And it's a good reminder that Hygge doesn't have to be complicated or expensive.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's about finding those simple pleasures that already exist and making a conscious effort to weave them into your routine.
It's about paying attention to those little things.
Yeah.
Those everyday moments that often get overlooked in the hustle and bustle.
It's so easy to just go through the motions.
It is.
So maybe it's, taking the time to really savor your morning coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe it's lighting a candle while you're making dinner.
I love that.
Or dimming the lights and enjoying a conversation with loved ones by the fireplace.
Such simple, accessible rituals.
Right.
But they have the power to transform our entire experience of the day.
They really do. And I love his suggestion to create a hookrag.
Yeah.
You know that designated cozy corner in your home?
Yes.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a space that invites you to slow down, unplug, recharge.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
It's like creating this little haven of peace and tranquility.
It is.
Amidst all the chaos.
Yes, and it can be so grounding to have that dedicated space.
And as we're talking about creating these cozy spaces,
Yeah.
I'm curious about the role of design in Hygge.
Okay.
We talked about lighting before, but what other elements contribute to that warm and comforting and inviting feeling?
So he talks a lot about using natural materials,
Okay.
like wood, wool, and leather,
Yeah,
to create that warmth and grounding.
right.
And then he also suggests incorporating soft textures,
Okay, like what?
things like plush throws and fluffy pillows
Oh, yes.
and cozy rugs,
I love it.
just to create that tactile comfort.
It's like wrapping yourself in a hug.
It is.
Right.
And then in terms of color,
Okay.
he recommends sticking with a more neutral palette of warm and earthy tones.
What would that be?
So think like soft grays,
Okay.
creamy whites,
Yes.
and then muted blues and greens.
Like,
Yeah, they tend to create a sense of calm and serenity, which is so essential for creating that Hygge atmosphere.
it's amazing how much thought goes into creating the perfect Hygge ambiance.
It's true.
But again, it's not just about aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's about intentionally designing spaces
Right.
that nurture well-being.
Absolutely. And I think it's about creating a sense of harmony between our inner and outer worlds.
Right.
So, when our physical surroundings are calm and inviting and aligned with our values,
Yeah.
it creates this sense of peace and contentment that extends outward.
Totally. It's like we're creating an environment that supports and enhances our overall well-being.
Exactly.
So it sounds like creating a Hygge home is about being mindful of the textures, the colors, the materials we surround ourselves with, choosing those that evoke those feelings of warmth and comfort and relaxation.
Exactly.
So we're creating a sanctuary, a place where we can truly unwind and recharge.
Your safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about making our homes a reflection of those values of warmth and connection and contentment
Yeah.
that really lie at the heart of Hygge.
Beautifully said.
It's amazing how something as simple as being mindful of our surroundings and creating these little pockets of peace and comfort can have such a profound impact on our well-being.
It's so true.
It's like Hygge is giving us permission to slow down, to appreciate the beauty of the everyday, and to prioritize those things that truly nourish our souls.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head, happiness isn't this elusive destination that we reach once we check off all the things on our to-do list.
Right.
It's about finding those moments of joy and contentment in the midst of our perfectly imperfect lives.
Yes, and realizing that those moments aren't always these grand gestures or these extraordinary experiences.
Right.
It's in the everyday, the ordinary,
Yeah.
the often overlooked aspects of our lives.
Exactly. And, he talks about that Danish concept of arbeidsglæde, which means work happiness.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that work shouldn't be something we dread, but rather something that can bring us purpose, satisfaction, and joy.
It's about finding ways to infuse those principles into all areas of our lives, not just our leisure time.
Precisely. It's about creating a life that feels aligned with our values,
Right.
both personally and professionally.
That makes me think about the role of community in Hygge.
Yeah.
And we talked about the importance of close relationships.
Yeah.
But it seems like Hygge goes beyond our inner circle of friends and family.
It does.
It's about fostering this sense of connection and belonging on this broader societal level.
Absolutely. Wiking talks about how the Danish welfare state, with its emphasis on social support and equality, is actually rooted in these Hygge values.
It's so interesting how these cultural values can be reflected in something like social policy.
Yeah, and it makes sense when you think about it. When people feel supported and cared for by their community, it creates this sense of safety and security and belonging, which are all those ingredients for Hygge.
It's like those principles create this ripple effect, extending outwards from our personal lives into our communities and even our societal structures.
Totally. It's about creating this culture of kindness and generosity and shared responsibility, where everyone feels valued and supported.
Recognizing that our well-being is interconnected, that we thrive when our communities thrive.
Exactly. And one of the things I find so inspiring about Hygge is that it's not passive.
Okay.
It's not something that just happens to us. It's something we actively create in our lives.
We choose it.
We do.
It's about being intentional with our time, our energy, our attention.
Yes.
And really directing those resources toward things that nourish our souls.
Yeah. And making those small everyday choices that add up
to
this life that's full of warmth, connection, and contentment.
And those choices might look different for everyone.
Right.
But the intention behind them is the same.
Exactly.
It's to cultivate those moments of joy, connection, and gratitude.
It is.
That make life worth living.
So as we're wrapping up our deep dive into Hygge, what is one final piece of wisdom you would like to leave with the listener? What's the one thing you want them to remember from this conversation?
If there's one thing I want our listeners to take away from this deep dive, it's that Hygge is not a luxury.
Okay.
It is a necessity.
Yes.
And in a world that often feels so chaotic and demanding, Hygge offers us a path to greater well-being. Connection joy.
Yes.
It's a reminder that we all deserve to experience those moments of warmth and comfort and contentment.
Absolutely.
Not just every once in a while, but as a regular part of our lives.
I love that.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to embrace these principles of Hygge.
Yes.
Create those little pockets of warmth and joy in your own lives. And remember that happiness isn't something you find, it's something you create one cozy moment at a time.
Beautifully said.